what's your thoughts on how it could possibly, if it continues that way, could affect the competitive balance across college football?
Yeah, you don't know. I mean, there's a lot of things that be careful what you wish for. A lot of loopholes we've seen. I mean, they drive trucks through them. I can't visualize how that would be a competitive advantage, or how that would work. I've really kind of thought all the different solutions or things that you could do. And my feeling would be that college football is that's an amateur status. I think there's about 300,000 college football players, and then there's pro football. About 2,000 NFL players per year. I think the fair thing to do would be not to restrict players to have to stay in college for 3 years. They could turn pro at any point. They could be drafted after their freshman year, they could be drafted after their sophomore year, they could be drafted after their junior year, their senior year. And that would also make a rule that if they weren't drafted, they could return to college. And I think it'd also be very productive to, if somebody were to leave after their freshman or sophomore or junior year and they hadn't finished their degree, that they would have the ability within a certain time span to come back and to finish their degree. That would be what I would suggest and propose. And you have examples of other sports. You have hockey, you have baseball, you have basketball. What do you think?
Is that something you would lead the conversation with the Coaches Association? You have the annual meeting, I guess, in January, I guess.
I'd be happy to propose that. Yeah, that's something I think would be beneficial and fair to everybody. I think that when there's a restricted nature to something, which is you have to be a college football player for 3 years before you're eligible to be drafted. I would say the other would be better. If you're a tennis player, you'd like to be a professional tennis player at 17, you can be a professional tennis player at 17. And to give the opportunity to somebody to be a professional football player when they're 19, 20, 21. It's not a long time that there's a window to be a professional football player if somebody's good enough to do that. And then could return and finish their college degree, and probably would be appreciated more, and not taken for granted and looked at for the value that it is. I mean, it's hundreds of thousands of dollars to get a college education these days, plus room, board, books, and tuition. And there are some that are good enough to be professional athletes, football players, and some that aren't. But to me, that would be a good resolution to the conversation we're having.
In the front left, Aaron.
Kind of going off that, do you foresee this new law in California giving those California schools a recruiting edge? I mean, they come to those kids and tell them that it's law. The other states, it's not.
I don't know. I don't know how that would work. We'd be hypotheticals, about that.
In the middle, Isaiah.
Daxton Hill, what did you see from him going?
It's just you don't know which way, you don't know where things would go, because there's such different rules for each sport, right? I mean, basketball is one and done. Hockey, they could be drafted and then return to college. Maybe a standard way of doing it would be clear and concise, good for, and there's an amateur game and then there's a pro game.
How do you assess Daxton Hill's performance going on the defensive side of the ball, going from Rutgers to Iowa?
So he was, much more active on the defense this past game. He's moved into that number one nickel spot. He had 6 tackles. He showed up on the stat line and taking steps and taking strides, I think, like everybody anticipated.
Well, you've long kind of said that you usually see the biggest jump from like game 1 to game 2, but since this is his first time really playing on defense against Rutgers, have you seen a similar type of jump from him at all?
Yeah, I think it's been a very good progression. See improvement for him each week.
In the front there, Austin?
Going back to the California legislation for a minute, you brought up amateurism, and we're all aware of examples of when those rules have been broken. How pervasive do you think that is, and could you see if there were a way for players to be compensated somehow, could that curtail some of the cheating that's out there? If you could do that legally.
I mean, that's another good conversation. I've explored it, in my own mind, and wouldn't be against that. There could be a system that, like the scholarship, it's really worth upwards of $100,000 or more when you factor in, room, board, the food, the travel, the many things, and that's per scholarship, 85 players. I mean, you could have a system that cuts all scholarships in half and has, instead of 85 scholarships, there's 42 scholarships. 42 players are paid a scholarship plus the $100,000. If you did that across all sports, that budget could stay the same. It could be financially feasible. But I think the other way would be better. There's amateur and there's pro, and there's no restriction of when somebody can take their shot at being a pro player.
You brought up loopholes. Do you feel like there's maybe a big disparity right now in how schools interpret the rules, how schools maybe utilize some of those loopholes?
Like it's been well documented. Yeah. What do you think? It seems documented, and then or voice recorded or videotaped, and then a day or two later, nobody says anything about it. It's accepted as some kind of business as usual. And if there's one thing I think the Coaches Association could do, would be a reward system for not violating the rules. A reason for the honest guy to be able to prosper under the system.
All right, Nick?
Jim,
Haven't seen any of those measures implemented.
you mentioned earlier with the conversation